Talks at Google. My name is Zaida Shen, Food Program Manager at Google and your host today. Please join me in welcoming today's guest, award-winning cookbook author, instructor, and host of My Greek Table, Diane Kochilas. Diane is the host and co-creator of the award-winning cookbook travel show, My Greek Table, on public television, and has made guest appearances on major network shows. Diane is an award-winning cookbook author as well of more than a dozen books on Greek and Mediterranean food. And if that wasn't enough, she also runs the glorious Greek Kitchen on Ikaria, a recreational cooking school and cultural immersion program where she teaches people the delights of a mostly plant-based blue zone longevity diet and the wonders of island life and Greek food culture. Please help me welcome Diane to Talks at Google.
Hello. Hi, Ida.
Hello, Diane. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. I'm actually in Ikaria right now.
Oh, how wonderful. Thank you for joining us from all the way from Greece. But you are a native New Yorker, correct?
I am a native New Yorker.
So tell us how you started your career as an expert of Greek and Mediterranean cooking then.
Well, just by virtue of having grown up in a Greek home, food was always front and center of our lives. And my dad was actually in the business, so I grew up around food. I came to the kitchen from a journalism background and kind of jumped in. And long story short, I got a cookbook contract to write my first book, which was called The Food and Wine of Greece. So this is way back in, my goodness, like 19.
We don't have to go.
Like 1988 or something, 89. And I moved to Greece for that, to research the book, and kind of taught myself how to cook along the way, because I wasn't exactly a professional cook, but I was a good researcher. So I was able to collect recipes, and my husband at the time was an artist, and I cooked for all his friends, and they were very happy about that, but also very critical, which was great because it helped me improve the recipes.
Wonderful. I guess it was constructive criticism then, right?
Yeah, I don't know if they thought of it in those terms, but yes, it was constructive criticism.
And how do you actually take that into, say, your cooking school? Do you just let people cook, or and you share all of the cuisines, or do you also provide that constructive criticism to better your students' cooking techniques, abilities, and the flavor of their food?
Well, when people come to Ikaria, I run anywhere between 8 and 10 weeks of classes a year. They come, I think, because they've heard of the island. For it's a blue zone. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. It's the name for a pocket of places around the planet where the longevity statistics are very high. So people are interested in that, and they come to the island to take this. It's really a lot more than cooking. I have a really nice garden. It's all organic. We, talk about the garden. We talk about wild food, and we go out, and if it's the season is right, we go out picking some wild food, or we always go on a nature walk. We come into contact with bees and beehives and the whole experience of Greek Ikaria honey and how that's made, and all of that ties into this this sort of longevity idea, and very natural eating and living, very slow paced, very present. People aren't multitasking here. They're focused on, one thing at a time, and it's all kind of in slow motion, which is really different from what we're used to in the United States. But the cooking is the main part of it, obviously. So usually we cook together in the mornings, and it's not 100% plant-based, but a lot of it is plant-based. And, for me, the greatest satisfaction is when people tell me that they haven't missed meat at all, or they never realized that plants could be so satisfying. Those are the lessons that I really want people to take back with them. And I keep in touch with many of my guests over the years, and they've they often write to me saying, "Oh, we cooked this eggplant dish that we did in Ikaria, or whatever, we tweaked it, or we added this." But it's always around this idea of very satisfying plant-based food.
So, could you tell us more about this plant-based or plant-forward diet versus vegetarianism?
Well, plant-based and vegetarian are probably pretty close to each other. I would say almost the same thing. Plant forward is different. Plant forward means that it's exactly what it sounds like, plants in the front. So it's about kind of a different geography on the dinner plate. A lot of plants, less protein. So plants are the protagonist, which is kind of different from the way people have been eating over the last 50 or 60 years, where you had meat or protein was the center of the plate, and then everything else was peripheral. This is kind of an inverted uh,
A flip
version of that.
meal.
Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit more about the blue zones? Is it and how is the Greek cooking different than other? What's the theme of the blue zones, and how does Greek cooking fit into it?
So the theme of the blue zones, there are a number of places on Earth. The term is interesting. It was coined by a man named Dan Buettner, who's a researcher and kind of an adventurer and a very good marketer. And he was working with a team of people, among whom were a couple of demographers. And they were literally circling places, they had a map of the world, and they were circling places with a blue pencil or blue pen where the longevity statistics were very high. And that's how the term was coined, blue zones. And Ikaria fits into that because of those statistics. I think on average, people are 10 times more likely to live to 100 than Americans are. And from what I know, on Ikaria, people live.
I think we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty. If you'll all just bear with us. Oh,
Okay.
you froze for just a moment there, Diane.
Oh, I froze. Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know where you heard where I dropped off, but
just around where you were saying for the people in Ikaria and their longevity.
So here on Ikaria, there are a lot of different factors come into play when it comes to longevity. I'm not a scientist, but I have empirical knowledge of this place. I've been coming here since I was a kid. And, there are all sorts of things, like the stress levels are very, very low. People don't stress out about very much, maybe nothing at all, in fact. There's always, just for an example, about a week and a half ago, I was at the beach driving up to leave, and it's sort of like this uphill little road. And there was a car coming down the driver I recognized. He was the son of a friend of mine. And I backed up so that he wouldn't back up into the road. And he was motioning to me, but I was sort of in my own world. And I actually drove my car over a short little, I don't want to say cliff, but, it was maybe about 3 feet high. So the car was kind of tilted on this little sharp little slope. They had to lift me out with a crane, but I got out of the car and we both said,
"Oh my,
fine, I'll just wait, and somebody will come and help me get out of here. This is not a big problem." And
that is very different.
Yeah, that's life attitude here. We looked at each other. We're fine. We have our health. It's a nice day. The car's fine. I'm going to go to the beach, and when the crane comes, it comes.
So it's an attitude as well as
it's an attitude. So and that's one aspect of longevity. Here, why people, stress is a big killer. But the diet is very important. It's very healthy. It's it's very wholesome. Most people farm for themselves, so there's a lot of really fresh food that's in season. There are a lot of ways to preserve food naturally on the island using the sun and some other things. Um, so I think a lot of it is has to do with a combination of stress and no, low stress and healthy diet. Some of it must be genetic. The social network here is very, very strong. So you never feel, even old people who may live by themselves don't feel alienated. They go up into the village, they sit at the coffee, the cafe. There's always someone to talk to. There's always someone who knows them, someone who cares about them, somebody who go to their house if they haven't seen that person for a day or two, to make sure he or she is okay. So there's this sense of
Community.
solidarity among people here that I think is we've lost it, I guess, a little bit, maybe a lot. So those
That
are the things I like to teach people when they come to Ikaria. That and really great food. A lot of it from the garden. But we also indulge too. We go for some down and dirty souvlaki. We have fun. It's not meant to be, a week of abstention and virtue. It's meant to be a week of fun, healthy fun.
sounds wonderful, and being part of a community, that sounds amazing
Mhm.
as well. Um, in considering those differences of our culture, how is it to incorporate, say, the Mediterranean diet into, say, the American lifestyle, which then maybe might slow us down a little bit to incorporate some of those cultural aspects?
I actually think it's very easy. I think, we talked a little bit about plant-based versus plant-forward. I think the Mediterranean diet is, like, I mean, the Greek diet and the Icarian diet are basically the Mediterranean diet. It's basically about changing the balance of things that you eat. So you're eating top down, a lot of plant-based food. Dairy has a role, animal protein has a role. Um, but it's about, there's an expression in Greek, pan metron ariston, which means everything in good measure. So it's about keeping a balance. And it's also, it's about seasonality. And you don't have to be in the Mediterranean to eat seasonally. You can eat wherever you are seasonally. It might not be, if you're in a northern climate, you're not going to be eating tomatoes, the same delicious tomatoes that we get here, but you'll still have tomatoes in the summer, and you'll have maybe better cabbages in the winter than we get in Greece. So it's it's about eating seasonally, about um, eating a lot of plants, cooking real food, eat real food, don't eat processed food. Um, I think that's about it.
Well, speaking of the cooking part, I have a lot of your cookbooks and noticed that many of the recipes are very approachable. They're not hundreds of ingredients long, and it doesn't take a long time. It might take a long time for the cooking part, but not in your actual time in front of the stove, correct? Is that just
I mean, I think when I started to write cookbooks, I realized pretty early on that the goal of writing a cookbook, I mean, there are two goals. One is to record recipes that are being lost, old recipes, historical recipes. And I have a book that is like that. That's not to say the food can't be cooked. It's delicious, and most of it's easy because that's the nature of Greek food. But by and large, I really want people to cook my food. Um, so I try to make recipes that are Greek, but that also can be almost reproduced anywhere, and that don't require a very high skill level in the kitchen. But that's also Greek food. I mean, Greek food is a home-based cuisine for the most part. It has a very different history from, say, French cuisine, or Chinese parts, imperial Chinese cuisine, or Thai food. It's much simpler, but it is based on having really good raw ingredients.
and a lot of flavors and freshness to it,
Hmm.
correct?
And it's an herbal palette more than a spice palette. That's not to say we don't use spices, but the gamut of Greek cooking, I would say, is more herb based than spice based.
That's a really interesting way of kind of sharing the expected flavor profile of the food, where it's more herby. Is it more herbaceous, or would you say that it just relies on the herbs more for the
I
flavors?
think in Greece the flora is very rich, so that's something that people grow up with. There are over 300 indigenous edible plants, herbs and greens. I'm talking about wild plants. So going out into the woods or into the fields to forage for that stuff is something that people still do. They even do it in cities. Um, I've done it. Like you go to, it's really fun. You go to the park and you're picking like, something that's edible in the middle of Athens. Um, um,
It,
so I don't know, is that background where you are or where I am? I think it's where you are.
I think
You're
it
in
might
Yorker.
be me. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
Um, but the greens and the herbs are part of the culinary culture here. So, I mean, just for example, everybody knows that most people in the United States have heard of spanakopita or spinach pie. That is one example of dozens and dozens and dozens of different savory pies. A lot of them are filled with greens. And one I make in Ikaria, for example, when I have classes, and I make it for my family as well, I've dubbed it longevity greens pie. It has, sometimes it has 20 or 25 different things in it. You could have spinach, Swiss chard, uh, sorrel, uh, sweet dandelion, fennel, poppy leaves, lemon balm, parsley, mint, maybe a few different mints, dill, oregano, maybe a little bit of sage because it's very strong, basil, marjoram, chervil, thyme,
And the
leeks.
list goes
By the way,
on.
yes, leeks, onions, carrots. So you have this incredibly rich, complex, plant-based filling, and it really is complex. I usually don't add any cheese to it because it's so beautiful. Without it's so pure. You don't need anything else.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. So definitely we'll need to come and visit you in Greece and try this longevity pie.
Ah,
uh, and speaking of the longevity, it's like I your career has spanned, like you were saying, your first book came out in the 80s, I believe. Um, you are pretty much the doyen of Greek cuisine. Um, what part of what you've done, because you have quite a few different mediums that you're on, platforms, what's your favorite, from hosting a PBS cooking show to writing cookbooks, cooking online and in-person classes? Is there something else that I've missed? And what's your favorite platform?
my favorite is cooking for my family and friends, my kids, and they eat really well. They know, they eat good, healthy food. I don't know. I've been fortunate, and I'm a hard worker. Um, but I really love doing the PBS show, the public television show. Um, it was always a lifelong dream to do it. I have a wonderful partner, and we produced this show with a lot of love. And I drag him to Greece for a few weeks every year, year and a half, whenever we managed to raise the money to do the next season. And I really, really love sharing sort of the unknown parts of Greece with an American audience, or it's actually an international audience now. Um, but I love to teach, and I really enjoy the classes I do in Ikaria. I've had wonderful people come to the classes over the years. I stay in touch with many of them, um, and I think teaching and doing television are not unrelated because it's all about communicating, something that I really love. So I feel very fortunate to have been able to do that. I also love to write. So the books are different though, because the book world has changed a little bit, and it's not, people don't have the attention spans that they used to have, and there's so much out there now on the internet that it's almost, I mean, I have a couple of new books in the works, so I'm happy about that. But and I do love to write, and I love to research. So I'm always, I always have a little notebook with me. Uh, if I see something interesting, jot it down, or sometimes, and now on my phone. But
Well, thank goodness for technology. That makes it, it's always there for you. You mentioned your show, and you have a new season coming out, correct?
we do, yeah. We have season 4 coming up, which will premiere on public television across the United States in October, and I'm really excited about that. It's an interesting season. I focused a lot on Athens, which is a very, very interesting city. Um, and I did a couple of other urban areas. One is Thessaloniki, which is also a very fascinating city with a very long history, very different history from Athens, because Athens was not always a city. There was a huge belly of hundreds and hundreds of years where it was almost it was very, the population was very little. It really started to repopulate, I guess, in the 19th century after the Greek war, the Greek Revolution. Um, but Thessaloniki has always been a city, and it's a multicultural city in many ways. It was a Jewish city up until World War II, and we did an episode on that, on the cuisine, of the Sephardic Jews in Thessaloniki. It was a very emotional episode. It was very interesting. Then we also went further afield to the western part of Greece, to a more mountainous area, which is kind of the cheese basket. That's kind of the, feta cheese, for example, um, is produced in several different places, but in this one area, in Epiros, it's very much a part of the local tradition. So I also did some thematic episodes, just examining different aspects of life in Athens, and working food into them, like the art scene, or different aspects of the food life in Athens. Different dietary. Um, I don't want to give too much away because I want people to tune in, but different aspects of the diet, but in a way that's always friendly and fun and informative.
And well, we're all very looking forward to it. I know that when I was kind of doing a little bit of a Google search, that was definitely a question that came up. When season 4? So
October.
for October, keep that in mind. And if you haven't already watched the previous seasons, please try to get to them so that you're all caught up with Greek cooking. I had mentioned that you have a lot of platforms, and for those of us who can't make it to Glorious Greek Kitchens, what platforms do you think we should really kind of focus on to get to know you better and get to understand Greek cooking more?
Well, I have a whole series of online classes that are up and available. So that's something that people can look for on my site. Let's see. I'm sort of there. Like, I have a pretty big internet presence. I have a recipe club that I created about 7 or 8 months ago. That is called the Ikaria diet, but it's really about eating in the spirit of Ikaria. It's not. I mean, there are only so many traditional recipes on the island. It's small and has always been isolated and poor. So it's not. I've covered a lot of those dishes in my first book about Ikaria. So this is more about eating in the spirit of Ikaria. So it's a lot of plant-based food, with information, nutritional information and other things. What
Do you
else?
work with a nutritionist as well on?
I
share that?
don't on that. I don't on that, but maybe moving forward in year two, I may. I'm not a fan of reading nutritional information in recipes. I think that's kind of a stress. It's stressful, you know. I mean, yeah. Do I want to know that the muffin I'm about to buy at XYZ, whatever
Mhm.
franchise is 790 calories before I buy it? And yes, I want to know. Because that will stop me from eating something and that's not good for me. But um, I think that we have one of the real lesson in the premium the Ikaria Diet Club is about relaxing about around food. That we're too obsessed, and we take everything to extremes in the United States. So this is really about just chilling out. It's so easy to eat well.
Oh, that
And
sounds fascinating. How is this on YouTube or Facebook or
you can join from my site.
Mhm.
Uh, it's called the Ikaria Diet Premium Recipe Club. So you can join from my site. It's members only part of the site. Um, so all of that, I mean, it's really about, I try to provide a lot of things on the internet. Um, my site has a lot of recipes and information about Greek food and weekly blog, all sorts of things. So it's a good starting point. But coming to Ikaria is the best.
I'll have to save up for that. You also do these short videos, and I think those have been most inspirational for me because it just gives me a quick idea, and I see how easily some of these delicious meals can come forth. What was the inspiration of just creating these quick little videos for your viewers?
Oh, just I like to communicate. So, and you also have to stay out there, like publish or perish kind of thing. uh, and I don't know. I have a lot to say. I can't. I guess that's sort of it. I want to share what I want to help people eat better.
Well, so in terms of like I said, you are the doyen of Greek cuisine, but you also focus on Mediterranean food. Are you once you feel like you've encompassed everything that Greek might be, the Greek food culture might be able to share with us? Are there other cuisines that you are interested in? Because you mentioned you are a big researcher. The Greek cuisine did influence a lot of other cultures, correct?
I That's a kind of a hard question to answer
Mhm.
because this part of the world has always been so fluid. Greece is a crossroads between East and West. So there's been a lot of influences back and forth, over thousands of years. Um, I'm interested in other parts of the Mediterranean. Rather interested in specific aspects of Mediterranean cuisine. I'm interested in how traditions are upheld, because I think that there's a particular, usually it's women who uphold those traditions in the kitchen. And I was just in Napoli a few weeks ago, and it was very interesting to see all the similarities between Southern Italian and Greek, and yet all the differences too. And the produce was amazing. So there's something about this part of the world that there are a lot of common threads, but there's also a lot of very interesting regional distinctions.
Um, so thank you for that. I have a question regarding because one of my first books that I read of yours was oh, hold on, it's right here, The Glorious Foods of Greece.
Yeah, that was.
And let me put that up a little bit. So it's like a tome of Greek foods, and then you traveled all over
Mhm.
to all the islands and the mountainous regions and such. Just what it's like between your researching and your writing, what was your favorite part of creating this amazing book? Because it was about bringing Greece to people as not as a diet, or it felt more like a cultural book than it was a cookbook. Can you tell us
It
a little
is a
bit more?
cultural book. That book, I had just moved to Greece, and I had a young daughter. My daughter was a baby at the time. I think the best part of that book was putting her on my back and traveling all over the country alone. It was really kind of crazy, but
So you traveled with a baby,
I
and
traveled with a baby. Not a baby. I mean, we started to travel when she was maybe a year old,
mhm.
and she's a great traveler herself. She loves to travel. Um, but the best part of that book was discovering Greece. You know, discovering um, these incredibly rich and deeply rooted traditions that are different from place to place. It's a small country, but it's very diverse, and that to me was very interesting. I wish my Greek had been better at the time. I would have probably gotten more out of that research, but I did a lot of research in a wonderful place called the Gennadius Library, which is connected to the American School of Classical Studies in Athens. And they have an incredible collection of all sorts of books, but there are, between the 17th and 19th centuries, there were a lot of Europeans who traveled to Greece, and it was part of their tour, their European tour. The upper class, the educated people, would they would go to seek out, the classics. And reading the accounts of some of those travelers, there was often mention of food. And that was very interesting to me because that was a cross-referencing for me too, of, oh, they're describing something that I ate in Crete 3 weeks ago, and this was 300 years ago. So it's just very interesting to see how un um, unbroken the continuity is in the cooking, in the food here.
So when you say that there was like a 300-year-old recipe that you can see there's no would you say that there's an evolution to it, or like how in America we have
Absolutely.
like fusion food, but could you describe
Absolutely,
the difference?
especially in urban areas. Athens is a really happening food city. It's a great food city. And it's all, you can find everything there from the most traditional Greek food, regional Greek food, to, very, very sophisticated modern Greek food, Michelin star restaurants, and not only simple, even simple neighborhood places that serve amazing contemporary food. I live upstairs from a really great restaurant in downtown Athens, and it's very exciting to see chefs taking understanding the roots of their own cuisine and transforming it into something that's contemporary and yet something that's still very identifiably Greek.
And what would you say are the most interesting influences on, say, contemporary Greek food? Are there particular? I mean, we're a global, economy now, and say Chinese food or Mexican food and spices might come the into the hands of a Greek chef. And how does that one? What is the most prevalent influence? I would ask, and then
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's one particular influence. I think that you're right. It's a very global kitchen now. I think that the best contemporary food. Look, the rule of thumb is it has to taste good. So if it doesn't taste good, no matter how creative it is, they miss the point. Um, but I think there's a lot of interest in Asian ingredients. There's a sizable Asian population in Athens. Um, the Japanese approach to fish and seafood is something that Greeks get because we have great fish and seafood traditions too. So crudo, sort of sashimi and those types of fish presentations are Greeks. Greek chefs have been influenced by that, I think, but they use Greek ingredients. So you might have some sort of citrus and masticha or ouzo or Greek herbs in a dish like that. But maybe the technique is not traditional Greek. Um, and people travel, so I think that there's again, I think the best chefs just make good food, and if they manage to make food that's a little bit hybrid but still has a certain Greekness to it, to me that's a success story.
Another reason to go visit you.
Another reason to visit Greece.
So for those of our viewers who are just getting to know you, what is, and I know this might be a really difficult question because you have such a breadth of work, but what's the one book or maybe a couple books that you'd like for people to check out?
I think for a sort of basic, kind of down and dirty Greek cookbook, my first book, The Food and Wine of Greece, which is still in print. I love the Ikaria book because there are a lot of anecdotes and stories in that book and good food. My Greek Table has great recipes, more contemporary. So I think those three books cover a lot of different things. You have very traditional, you have very regional, and interesting look at a very interesting place. And you have fun, more contemporary Greek stuff.
And is there
I love those. I love all my books.
They're all your babies, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is there a particular dish that you think is like the perfect, if nobody's really cooked any Greek food, is there any one dish that everybody should make at least once?
That's a hard question to answer. There's so much great food here. I would say some people should try their hand at phyllo pies. Maybe start with a classic spinach pie, a really good Greek salad, because that will help you understand the importance of great raw ingredients. Maybe a fish dish, simply prepared. Um, and really good Greek olive oil, which you can find in a lot of places in the United States.
And if we were trying to set up a little Greek pantry, what are some of the key ingredients that we should always have on hand?
Extra virgin Greek olive oil, sea salt, Aegean sea salt, Greek oregano. My daughter just came home. Hold on one second. Kivelaki. Kiveli. You have to be quiet because I'm doing a Google talk. Sorry, honey. Give me 10 minutes. So what were we saying? Olive oil.
Olive oil, Greek oregano.
Greek oregano, sea salt, feta cheese, Greek feta cheese, lemons, and garlic. If you have those things in your cupboard, you can make anything Greek.
I was just going to ask about lemons. To me, it's like that seems to always be there to brighten up the food. Well, thank you. I think we might have a question, and here it is. It's from Karina. What is a healthy go-to Greek recipe that most people can make easily?
Wow, there are a lot of them. I would say, let me think about that for a second. I would say anything with greens, cooked greens, or even a Greek salad is a really good thing to eat. Very simple, very good, healthy. any kind of just simple boiled vegetables with really good olive oil and a little salt.
Oh. And then top it with some of those wonderful pantry ingredients that you just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Some olive oil and Aegean sea salt and lemon zest or something. Oh, I had a great question and I just completely lost it. It was, my apologies. Well, I have others. Right. What you have your premiere in October and you mentioned 2 more books. What else is next up for you?
What else is next up? I don't know. We'll see. Man plans, God laughs. I don't know. Corina, somebody asked about gigantes, which are the big Greek beans, and I would say that's an excellent pantry item too. We forgot to mention legumes and pulses, very basic part of the diet here. So things like lentils and beans and chickpeas and giant beans, all of those things are very basic.
So one of my first, when you mentioned the gigantes, my first experience with Greek cuisine was the meze.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what part that has in, say, the Greek menu, and then what makes a great meze offering?
So the meze tradition is the tradition of small plates, and it's kind of a grazing tradition. There are a lot of different plates on the table at once, and the idea is that you have a variety in every aspect, of all the senses. There's a variety of flavors, there's a variety of aromas, there's a variety of textures, there's a variety of heat levels, there's a variety of colors. So a meze table has a little bit of everything, something crunchy, something dippable, dip, maybe something spicy, maybe something soothing, like a yogurt dip, maybe some meat, maybe some seafood. Depends. Usually the rule of thumb is anything that swims, you drink with ouzo or tsipuro, which is like grappa, and anything of the earth, and basically animal protein, is better with wine. And it's a little bit like the Spanish tapas, but it's a little bit more. It's a bit more substantial.
So does that also, is it in lieu of a meal, or is it because I feel like I can eat that as a meal, or is it actually just something to start the meal with?
It's not necessary. It's not really to start the meal. It's kind of in between meals. It's meant to whet the appetite. So you might go to, you might have a little meze with somebody in the later part of the afternoon, and then have dinner later. But it's not a starter. It's not an appetizer.
I think I've been eating this all wrong.
So. It's a whole separate category. But you can have a whole meal just of mezeves.
And are those simple dishes that maybe you can give us a few ideas of what we might be able to easily put on our table for a mezefes?
I would do something like tzatziki, which is a Greek yogurt dip with cucumber and garlic. That's easy to make. Maybe some meatballs, maybe a little bit of grilled shrimp, some sort of, maybe some beans, like a nice giant bean dish, something with phyllo pastry, so little triangles, or so like spring roll type things, olives, even something as simple as olives and a salted cucumber and a little bread and olive oil. That's all it takes to have a little meze. Octopus, although octopus, try to eat less of it now because it's a very intelligent creature.
Yes, I think we all watched a documentary on that recently, didn't we? I was just wondering about the when you mentioned the octopus, and it brought back COVID and our time that we've all kind of just spent hunkered down into our homes. Did that a lot of us picked up cooking. And did that kind of change how you thought about cooking and how you were going to bring great cooking to your viewers or to new people, a new audience?
I was doing some live online classes during that time. I was in New York, so I was doing some live online classes. Um, but did it change anything for me? I mean, in terms of the way I cook, or
Well, like your online classes, did that bring in
I think
new
so.
fans?
Yes, I think it did, and I think, and I still do that. As I mentioned earlier, I have a whole series of online classes, and I continue to film them. So, um, there's it's something I want to continue to do. I like doing it.
Oh, wonderful. I was just wondering, do we have any other more audience questions? We are definitely open to hearing from our audience. Okay. So we don't have any right now, but I do encourage all of you to ask any of your pressing questions or even maybe recipe ideas from Diane, like Karina did. You won't have this opportunity again, and Diane is a wealth of knowledge. So I'm going to ask you in terms of I've been watching you on YouTube, and there's some amazing contents. You haven't really posted a whole lot recently, right? So I think just 3 months ago, we've been getting some newer content. What's your favorite format? Is it the classes or is it the shorts that you have? What's your favorite way of getting that media?
I think the
out?
classes. I think more than anything, the classes.
The classes, the online classes, or just the quick just you classes? Because like in our format right now, people can ask questions live. Is that something that happens on your online classes, or is it not a live class?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the
Do
question.
you have live online classes like in?
I will be starting to do that. I plan to start doing that in the fall.
Okay, great. Well, that's really exciting, and I really appreciate your sharing with us. I'm going to wrap this up since we don't have any more questions.
Okay.
We really appreciate your time with us, Diane, and I do hope that everybody watches this previous 3 seasons of My Greek Table and is ready for the October premiere of your next season.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for inviting me to be part of this.
We really appreciate your joining us.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.